Hello, and welcome to this overview of the FF&EZ-Design software. The overview is divided into segments. This first segment will cover how the user interface works, how to move around the system, and how to add and edit information. The next segments will cover the main data screens and some specific features on them that can save anywhere from minutes to days of time. Finally, I will introduce the FF&E worksheet and a procedure for creating FF&E content from that central screen. I will be covering this material fairly quickly, so feel free to pause, especially if you have the software and can try out what you see. To get started, we are on FF&EZ's opening screen. The arrangement of buttons reflects the relationships between the parts of a design project. The arrows signify an ownership relationship to the data to which they point. This is sometimes called a parent-child relationship, but the basic idea is that each type of data may own many items in any list to which it points. For instance, a single client may own any number of projects. Some relationships are more equal, as in the FF&E worksheet, where any project room may contain multiple objects, and any object can be used in multiple rooms. You won't normally come back to this point because, as you will see, each major screen gives you quick access to the others. Let's look at the basic user interface by opening the vendor list. We'll do that by clicking on the vendor list button. On the left, you'll see two major types of command buttons. The Views section allows you to move from one screen to another, while the command buttons below it are used to do your work. Let's quickly look at the Views buttons. We're looking at the vendor list, but we can move to the project list or any other list by clicking on the button for that list. Now we can go right back to the vendors simply by clicking on that View button. At the top of the form is a title, reminding you of which list you're working on, and below that is the data list area. The list shows all the items or records in this data file with columns for the most important information about each item. On some screens, columns may show information that is being pulled from a related list. For instance, the specification list will have a column showing the vendor. You can sort and reverse sort the list by clicking or shift-clicking the column title. On many screens, this means you can group records to make it easier to edit related items. For instance, you might want to group items by vendor or by location. At the bottom of the list are two tools to quickly find specific records. The Find command uses the currently active sort order to look up what you enter in an index. For instance, if the list is sorted by vendor ID and you type SH, it will take you to that section in the data. To its right is a search tool, which works more like a word processor search, in which you pick a field and then look for an expression anywhere in that field. Below the list is the data area, where you can enter the information about the item that you're adding or editing. One feature of this area is that it uses a visual cue to remind you if you're actively editing the current item. Understanding whether you are in browsing mode or editing mode is important because FF&EZ requires that you save or abandon your changes before it lets you move to another item in the list. We're currently in browsing mode. To see what editing mode looks like, I can click on either Add, Edit, or Clone. When you are in the editing mode, you can open any other screen in the system, but you can't move to another item in this one without telling FF&EZ what you want to do with your data entries. Although it's possible that you might enter a change that you don't want to save, the more likely thing that this prevents is forgetting to finish your entries after being interrupted. To save an entry, you simply click on Save or use one of the shortcuts for that, like Control-Enter. Since I mentioned the Clone command, let's touch on that. This command is called Clone instead of Copy for a specific reason. Unlike spreadsheets, where you might need to make exact copies of rows in order to complete your data, a database is designed to nearly eliminate the need to simply copy data. A clone, then, is a copy that is intended to be further developed as a separate item. That is, you clone something with the intent to change it into something similar but different. Each version of the clone command has specific differences based on what is being cloned that I'll cover later. Each editing screen includes a query and a print button. The query tool takes the find and search tools a step farther by allowing you to create a set of conditions that items in the current list must meet. When you run a query, only those items are displayed. This makes it easy to edit or print a certain set of items that can't be grouped by a simple sort order. For instance, if I wanted to see all of the vendors that are in New York, I could enter city contains New York, enter that on the list of conditions, and then run the query. And when I do, I'll get just those vendors. When the query is active, you'll see a little flag up at the top to remind you that not everything is showing. And then to undo the query, you can do a show all. The print button brings up a report setup form on which you can select a report, set general and report specific options, and then preview or print it. Please note that each major editing screen has its own set of reports. For most of those screens, these are simple reports used to review and maintain the data on each screen. The exception is the reports on the FF&E worksheet. All of the reports you would use to communicate to a client or to those doing the purchasing for a project or vendors will be on this one screen. The reports have filter options where you can see all records in the current query, and that's enabled because we have one in effect right now, or the current item on that particular list. Each major screen will also have a quit button to close the program, and either an exit form or close project button. The exit button does not normally need to be used, since you never have to close a major form to get to another one. Finally, you can get context-sensitive help as well as access to a general introduction and how-to topics by pressing the F1 key. This concludes the first segment of our overview. In the next segments, I will cover the main editing screens and introduce some of the most useful functions on them.